So, my name's Shane Cox, just for the record. And I am attempting to make a whole video series in regards to what I've been working on for a long time. I'll start by saying that I was born with a very abnormal mind. And that ended up being a blessing as much as a curse. The blessings are ability to see things and think ways which most humans can't for some reason. The curse, inability to fit into the system and cope with the stresses of the system. There's a lot of mismatch going on here, so to speak. So what most people's preferences might actually be a stress to me. So apparently I have Asperger's and autistic tendencies, which might be true, but I think it's another way of saying that there is a difference within me, and it's recognized as that title without going into it more specifically. So all of these videos are about, well, I'm making 2 series. One will be called Hyperdimensional Mathematics, Telepathy, and Pyramids, which is the featurette. It's what I really have what I'm most able to give in respect to very fresh and new ideas of that nature. The other one will be called, I think, For Here Ever After, which will just be my crazy philosophies and all the things that have gone through my brain all this time, shared outwards, poured forth for you all to hear and appreciate, hopefully, or dismiss. It's up to you. So, yes, it's a great magical expedition which I'm about to go on. And all this knowledge I've accumulated over the years in regards to the mathematics has led to something truly magical, so much so that it cannot be believed. Because I am in a different world. And if I can't bridge the gap between my world and the world of people and that common understanding, I won't be able to convince anyone of any of what I've been doing. And so I'll have to work in isolation on what I've been working on, mostly in isolation up until this point. So these videos are an attempt to try and, lure in people to take their money and, scam them and everything, because that's the way it rolls, There is a New Age community out there. Sadly, it's a blasphemy. Most of it. And unfortunately, I'm instantly assigned to that category because of the New Age claims and the price tag that comes along with these items. It's like milking the teat that never stops giving. Unfortunately, this incurs great damage to people with genuinely new ideas because smart people see through it and see the nonsense. They see the lies and the constant faith, constant belief without proof, I guess. So that puts me in a sticky situation because I'm going to present a lot of mathematics, which is not proven to you, but it's proven to me. And that's through mathematical congruency, which I'll get into in other videos. There is hundreds of videos worth of information that I can present because I've been doing this for so long. I have a lot of data and I can go into so many subjects, subcategories of this mathematics I've been working on. So basically, for whatever reason, I'm able to understand a certain type of mathematics, which is all powerful and comes from the very beginning, because it literally, in the next video, it is the beginning of this third dimension. It's extrapolated from the beginning, which is the fundamental units of length and time and whatnot, the correct value for the blank length, etc. So I don't know why, but it's almost as if my brain can connect to some place in the universe that has a universal set of laws, and I spend all my time using a very special process, which is a balance of intuition and mathematics. No, intuition and logic, which, if you're to polarize this system and constantly oscillate between the two, but at the same time have that creative input. So what I do is I use first intuition and then logic to actually create universal systems in order to create a framework for how this dimension works as a, and this is where it gets interesting, as a render process. As if it was operating from a simulation, as is if this reality is a rendered simulation inside of a computer, a very strange type nature of computer, and the language in which this simulation uses is obviously geometry, length, time, density, frequency, and many other forces. However, I will be focusing firstly on those, and how what I've discovered allows you to get into the command line of the simulation by using the same code in which the simulation runs, being this reality being a simulation. And so therefore, by using the same language, you can communicate, because you can tune, to interface is to imitate interface. To imitate the code of the simulation is to interface with it using pressure fluctuations, stress tensors, by understanding the hyperdimensional mathematics, which I have literally spent, I've been doing it for 15 years. I calculated it out the other day. It was about 36,000 hours of higher thought function in order to reduce everything back down to its simplest form and to create a machine that can interface with the simulation, which I believe I know how to do, but I haven't attempted it yet. In the past I did, before I knew what I was doing, but I haven't attempted it yet for the last 6 years. There is reasons which I do not want to build it by myself. There's financial reasons for one prototype, one that I can build cheaply on my own cash, because it's not very expensive. I don't want to build by myself because there's a danger involved in doing this based on the current situation of our configured system on this planet. And the fact that I'm one person going against a current which has many units in it. I'm one unit opposing a current that is just trillions of units going the opposite direction. That creates a side effect which I'm not prepared to endure just yet. So essentially, I've come up with a way to understand the universal grid of hyperdimensional force and forces, and from that foundation extract geometry to set up stresses in space-time and communicate with the simulation of the source. And as I say this, it's almost like I can create a virtual audience within my head. And what I'm getting is that, like, it's way too outside of, it's so many octaves away from where we've currently come in our technological progression. It's going to take a lot of patience for the individual to actually absorb this, to visualize it, and even possibly come to the idea that it might be credible. It's not really relevant to me whether or not people believe, but it's relevant that I express the information because I think it's highly valuable, and it just needs to be expressed. I'm not ready to explain to people how to make the machine yet. I don't want to create a problem for myself or others yet, but at some point I may very well do that, because this is the last year, as in 2020 is the year that I will create the machine. And as that gets closer and closer, I need to do things to express this information. Today is currently the 18th of January 2020. By the time the year is through, I need to procure the parts to create the machine. And I've decided that that's the timeline. I've known how to build the great machine for a few years, but I've waited, frustrated and patient at the same, well, both patiently frustrated, been waiting to do it. I wanted people to empathize with it so that we could do it in a community group / setting, but it's my attempts to convey the data and for people to empathize with it is difficult, because it does sound way too far out there. And that's what happens if your brain is in the wrong octave, or if you're born in a different dimension, or if you're from an older matrix, which is possible. It's possible that I'm not native to this system. And so what I understand inherently, or what I'm magnetized towards, is not here on Earth, or it's not in the present. It's like something you have to grab from. You have to pull it from the ether. You have to take it. You have to take it. Or genuine creativity is taken from somewhere else, from the grid, and it's brought here. It's not an echo or an imitation of other people's work, which most creativity is to a degree, but some people take from the infinite, the everywhere, the place that is not a place, the eye of the single mind, or whatever, I don't know. So there's a lot of mystery, there's a lot of stories, there's a lot of evidence. Either way, the machine will be made. My greatest concern is for my safety and other people's. As I touched on before, the New Age movement has blasphemed all of these prospects because so many people are milking it for profit and just making up stuff. Because they can. The difference between me and them is that I've refined this art as far as I can until it kind of stopped at the beginning. And the quality of what I have is more thorough, I guess, because I've spent all of my time perfecting this art and this mathematics and the power it has. So the expression in these videos will be the laws, the fundamental laws in which I understand hyperdimensional mathematics and how to manipulate the hyperdimensions using the coordinates of this dimension, which are the Planck units, not calculated the way that conventionally they are, but in understanding that those units are the holy grail for all of this work, and being able to map and scale the hyperdimensions, those coordinates are essentially the beginning, and they must be exact. You must use them as an exact reference to achieve these things. Otherwise, nothing can be achieved because you have no way of tuning into the source. I'll just touch on the nature of the specific function of the machine, and I'll explain my understanding of off-world intelligences and where it began for me was that I was had a revolution inside of me about 15 years ago, where my awareness, I kind of broke away from the religion I was brought up in and was liberated and free. So my mind kind of recalibrated and evolved and went seeking. And as a result, I found myself driving through the forest one afternoon, and I got this really strong vision, an idea, which was an impressional thing. And that was like a message from somewhere else saying that there are other creatures and beings throughout the entire solar system which communicate telepathically across the dimensions, and sometimes to buffer the signal they use a machine to amplify it. And I had it within myself the ability to understand the nature of these machines and create one for myself. It was like an offer. They were making me an offer. Pretty much said, all you have to do is look for a symbol which you'll come across in your reality shortly, and that is the beginning. Follow that path until the end, and you will have this type of machine. And basically, obviously, with that machine, we'd be able to communicate with them and with us telepathically, etc. And so 2 weeks later, I did receive a book, and it did have in the front of it, the book was called We the Arcturians. And in the front is a symbol, the Alpha Omega, with 3 lines horizontally through it. And as soon as I saw it, it was so clear that that was the symbol. And I was so obsessed because I received a message and then this thing was here, and I was like, wow, that must be it. That's the symbol. And yes, the Alpha Omega is the equation to puncture a hole in this reality, but the symbol doesn't depict the exact geometry and all of whatnot. But it was what I needed to begin. It was just the symbol. I didn't even know it was in 3D. I thought it was just 2D symbol, and then it was in a pyramid, and it just kept on unlocking as time went by. But it took me all this time to figure it out from that beginning. But the seed and the path came from that vision and that beginning, and it extrapolated into one pure form, a mathematical form made into geometry, into physical matter. I should say will be made, but it is virtually obviously made in the computer, TurboCAD. And that made in physical form will execute these functions as a telepathic machine, a hyperdimensional accumulator and an oscillator at the same time. And so, yes, pyramids, stress tensors, densities, universal units, telepathy, off-world creatures, demons, all sorts of fantastical things, which, again, I can only explain the absurdity of it. Very few of you will be able to empathize with it or even believe it. I understand my position, and I understand the probability in which I came to be, and it's just incredibly slim. And that's the way it is. There's just, I didn't choose who I was, how my mind was to be configured, but this is what it does. And coming forth in the videos, as I said, I've partitioned them to hyperdimensional mathematics, telepathy, and pyramids, and another series for Here Ever After, which will be the philosophy. And the one will be philosophy based, the other one will be the mathematical base. So you can just choose whatever one if you're so interested in watching it all of this. And so what you'll get out of the videos, as I mentioned briefly before, is the universal laws on how to scale the dimensions, which can convert into physically being able to build things in order to pull and communicate hyperdimensional energy, to communicate with hyperdimensional fields and to pull those fields and even oscillate them. But it's not all as just so easy as that. It's actually really hard to set up and build these machines correctly. It's relatively easy, but it's hard for an individual to do it, especially an individual without engineering skills or the ability to build, because it involves precisely made shapes and the vacuum and various other criteria, oscillators that have to be tuned with the correct geometric shape, the correct frequency. And so I know this because I've been playing around with them for years and doing vacuum tests for years, and I'll be adding some of those videos of my testing. I've got a test out the back at the moment, testing out some chemically strengthened glass to make a relatively cheap vacuum chamber in order to facilitate the machine. That's kind of the overview. I'll just leave on a note, and that is that the world could be truly progressional, but the humans living on this planet have been programmed very poorly by those that have dominance over them, and as a result, we're kind of destroying ourselves by exacerbating the worst attributes inside of a human. And so as a result, I subtract and step away from so many social systems because I believe that being in proximity to so many systems of this world has the effects of one of the most deadly viruses in existence. That is a virus of the mind, and the danger, not to be underestimated, what happens to the mind when it's adopted a faulty belief system. And there are so many things coming out at the moment which are faulty, and they are making us crazy and kind of destroy ourselves on a psychic level. We're functioning biologically and mentally and spiritually in a misaligned way, which is causing so much stress to the mind, body, and spirit, and it's making people crazy. So I thought to myself, I'll be a good boy and participate in the world and all things. But I learned that it just makes you sick. The only thing you can do is keep your spirits high and find the right people to be involved with so that they can perpetuate and help balance you, not disbalance you. So this machine and these machines are a way to bring about this balance through entrainment and the field that comes off of them when they're built. However, because they're of a class, because they're technically a free energy device, they're very dangerous to build because there are prying eyes out there which see what certain people are up to. And they hold all of the power currently. And that's why, as a disclaimer, I'm not going to explain on these videos how to create in entirety a machine yet, because it's too dangerous for me. And I know how the story goes. No one will take these videos seriously up until the point the machines work, and then people will turn crazy because that's how people are, especially people that haven't worked for something, which I have. So I've learned the hard way, and I know I paid the price of admission to get this knowledge because I earned it myself. No one gave it to me. The beings didn't give it to me. They said that you have to do it yourself. You have to figure it out yourself. They didn't give me anything, and that's the way it's meant to be. I did it myself. So there is like a limit to what I will share, but the idea is to share all of it when it's safe to do so. I don't know how long that will be. I don't know if the world will be around for very much longer in respect to not knowing the future. But I do know that there's a balance a line that I have to walk on. So in conclusion to all of my ramblings up until this point, I will say that a magical future awaits the human race, and anti-progressional behavior is what's getting in the way of these things for people trying to rain down their ideas upon the world. So I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video, which will be about the universal unit of length and how that can be made into all manner of wonderful things. Adieu.